The Nintendo Switch 2 is officially nearly 1 year old. But despite the fact that it has been a little bit of a weird year for Nintendo, it's also been a massive one. Not only in terms of sales of the Nintendo Switch 2 itself, but also in terms of its games, with not just its first-party games, but also its third-party ones as well. So I thought this would be the perfect time to go through my top 10 Nintendo Switch 2 games, and hopefully give you some ideas about what other great games there are on the console other than Pokopia. Now for this list, we are exclusively talking about either Nintendo Switch 2 exclusives, so games that have only released on the Nintendo Switch 2, or games that have a specific Nintendo Switch 2 version. So these might be games that are released on both the Switch and the Switch 2, but do definitely make use of the increased power the Nintendo Switch 2 has. But before we get into the top 10, I do want to do some honorable mentions. And first up is Mario Kart World. Okay, is this an absolutely incredible game and a really fun Mario Kart? Absolutely. I think it brings together some of the best elements of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and just elevates them enough to feel like a brand new game, but also not ruin what they made and improved with that one. But despite the fact that it is a fantastic game by so many different metrics, it would be incredibly disingenuous if I put it in this list at all. Because I don't think I've actually picked up Mario Kart World whatsoever after the second month of the Switch 2's life. And I think the fact that I haven't found any need to play it again is probably the best indicator as to why it hasn't made it to this list. The next honorable mention is going to go to Animal Crossing New Horizons 3.0 update. Now this is actually the only Nintendo Switch 2 version of a Switch game that I'm going to mention on this list. And it's not so much saying that all of them are bad. They can be good, especially if you haven't played them on the Nintendo Switch. But Animal Crossing New Horizons is really the only Switch 2 version that I found myself picking up. And whilst I don't necessarily think that's down to the Switch 2 edition per se, I think it was more down to the general things they added to the game, like the hotel. The Nintendo Switch 2 edition did make the game just look and feel great. I love the fact that loading times were faster. I love the improved resolution as well. And if we're being entirely honest, it really doesn't take much to make me want to go back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. And this update gave me a solid 50 or so hours of gameplay, so I'm not mad at it. With the honorable mentions out of the way, let's get on to the top 10, and I'm gonna try and put these in order. And in 10th place, we have 2 Point Museum. Now me and the 2 Point games have a little bit of history, and whilst I did love 2 Point Hospital, I really didn't get on with 2 Point Campus and didn't find myself playing that game very much at all. So when 2 Point Museum rolled around, I was excited, but also a little bit nervous that maybe this would be a repeat of that. But thankfully, 2 Point Museum is absolutely fantastic, because this is a museum management game with a little bit of a difference. Now the thing I love about 2 Point Museum is even though you think you know what this game is going to be like, you actually have no idea, and every single level of the game will have you questioning what it actually means to manage a museum. You see, even though the beginning level starts off much like you'd expect, with you placing down things like fossils for people to come visit, donation buckets so the visitors who enjoy it can give you some money, and even placing down ticket offices in order for people to actually make it into the museum, it's not long before you see the true character of 2 Point Museum. You see, after you've placed every single artifact that you own, you'll find out that you now need to go out and find new artifacts to put on display, and that means sending your staff members off on expeditions in order to find them. Now some of these expeditions will be pretty straightforward. You'll just be sending a couple of members of staff to go do their thing, and when they come back they'll have something to put on display. But other expeditions are going to be a little bit more dangerous, and the items that you send your staff with and which staff members you choose will determine how successful they are and if they make it back at all. Where things begin to get truly interesting is when they've taken the word museum and kind of just forgotten about it, as each level has a different theme, and you'll see anything from a normal museum, an aquarium, to even putting ghosts on display. And this means that the gameplay just never gets boring, and it gives you plenty of reasons to kind of hop between different museums in order to try and level up and achieve different goals. They've also just added mouse mode support, which is absolutely massive and something this game definitely missed at launch. And even though it's not quite as good as a keyboard and mouse, this is still a really great way to play this game. So if you love a good management game, I think you're going to enjoy this one. Next, I want to thank today's sponsor, D-Brand. And this is honestly perfect, as the Kill Switch grip is actually my go-to way to play in handheld. Now, even though I did already own the Kill Switch, they did send me over a couple of different colors to try out. So of course, I had to go for a mix between the pink and the purple. The reason I like the Kill Switch so much is just the way it feels in my hands, as this just makes handheld gaming so much more comfortable. But recently they just came out with this thing called the Joy Lock, and this allows you to connect your Joy-Cons much like you would do with the official Nintendo version, only this time you can keep the Kill Switch grip on when you do it. But the best part about this grip is the fact that you can actually change how wide the Joy-Cons are, making this so much more comfortable than just using the Joy-Cons by themselves. Now you can either buy the grip by itself or as part of a bundle, but if you do already own a Kill Switch, then you can actually find a discount code in your emails to get this for a little bit less, and you can check out the link for both in the description down below. Next, in 9th place, we have Octopath Traveler 0. Despite the fact that Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 were fantastic games, I feel like this released with not so much hype about it, which I don't really understand, as this game has been absolutely great. Now, it is worth mentioning that this is an Octopath game only by name, as this doesn't share the one core element that should make this an Octopath game, and that's the fact that you don't actually play as 8 different characters. Instead, you get to make and play as your very own character. Now, I thought the first 2 Octopath Traveler games were dark, but this has taken it to a whole new level. And I found myself like literally gasping every 2 seconds at some of these storylines because they really went there with them. But that was one of the reasons why I couldn't stop playing it. Now, this is a story based in the realm of Ostera, and the game begins with essentially your hometown being burnt completely to the ground. And this sets you off on a quest not only for retribution, but also for restoration, as you try and restore your hometown back to how it was in your childhood. And this is a journey that's going to take you all across the land. In this world, there's something called the Divine Rings. And much like Lord of the Rings, these give the wearers immense power. The only issue is these rings have not exactly fallen into the right hands. And despite the fact that you start off your journey just trying to get retribution for your hometown burning to the ground, you find yourself in a much larger story. One that involves rounding up all of these divine rings and removing them from those who are undeserving. Now, even though in this game you just play as yourself, this doesn't mean that you'll be battling alone. And wherever your journeys may take you, you will make friends who will become very useful in battle. Much like the first 2 games, this has a turn-based battle system, and the boss battles in particular are hard but a lot of fun to do. Although it is worth mentioning, there aren't any difficulty settings in Octopath games, which is a little bit disappointing. The battling is, however, fun to get to know and master, and it gradually ramps up as the story progresses. But the thing that makes me fall in love with RPGs is its story, and Octopath Traveler 0 didn't disappoint. And this is made only better by the fact that it's fully voice acted. And I know people are divided over the HD 2D graphics, but I personally really like them, and this game looks so impressive on the Nintendo Switch too. And you will definitely be getting a lot of game for your money. This is a long old game, but the story really hooks you in and makes it something that you don't want to put down. Next, in 8th place, is Split Fiction. I had to include it in this list because truly, I don't think there is any better co-op experience. And even though it's debated as to whether It Takes Two is better than Split Fiction, I'd say personally that whilst the story didn't quite hit me the same as It Takes Two, I found the gameplay to just be phenomenal, and this looked great on the Nintendo Switch 2 as well, which makes it perfect. Now, if you've been across the internet looking for a new co-op game, you will see this game mentioned on the top of everyone's lists. And that is for one good reason. This does co-op unlike any game I've ever played before. As right at the beginning of the game, you'll get the option to either play as Mio or Zoe, both of which are writers, but with two very different writing styles, with one of them writing sci-fi and the other writing fantasy. But they have to put their differences aside when they find themselves trapped in their own stories after being hooked up to a machine that is designed to try and steal their ideas. And the only way they're going to successfully escape their stories and keep their ideas intact is to work together. Now, the game is kind of split into different levels, and you'll alternate between doing fantasy levels and sci-fi. But the thing that makes it really interesting is that each level gives you a new skill set. You effectively get different powers as you go throughout the game. And although these powers are different, they're also always complementary. So you'll have to work together to not only make it out of situations alive, but to also figure out the puzzles as you go as well. And some of the co-op mechanics, especially if you want to get some of the secret areas, are very intricate. This is one of those games where you categorically have to be able to talk to one another in order to make it through. As I said, this is one of the best co-op games of all time, and I can't recommend it enough. Then in 7th place, we have Dispatch. Now, it is worth mentioning that the Nintendo Switch 2 version of this game is censored. So if you are someone who has a different way of playing this game and want to be able to choose your experience, then that's definitely worth bearing in mind. But what this effectively means is any nudity in the game, for example, is blanked out by a big black square, and certain language and noises are also cut out as well. This was only an issue for one tiny scene where I had no idea what was going on, but other than that, the censored version was fine. But this sees you play as Robert Robertson, otherwise known as Mecha Man, who is a superhero that's a little bit different from other superheroes in this universe because he doesn't actually have any powers himself. Instead, he just has a really powerful suit. But after having his suit completely destroyed by his arch nemesis, he's forced to take a job. This means that instead of being the hero himself, it's actually his job to send the heroes to whoever needs help. But unfortunately, his job is a little trickier than he first imagines it, because he is in charge of a group of rehabilitated supervillains. And although they don't make his life easy, it does make the game absolutely fantastic. Now, this is one of those narrative choice-based games for the most part. So this means that your decisions in the game matter, and you might even come across some quick time events as well, although you can turn them off in the settings if you don't want to deal with them. But what really adds to the gameplay is the fact that not only do you have this narrative side, you also have the superhero dispatching side, which is its whole own minigame, where it's up to you to try and pick the right superhero for the job. And this not only involves trying to figure out both the strengths and weaknesses of each of the superheroes, so you can really figure out which situation fits them the best, but you also need to take into account which superheroes can actually work together, as not everyone gets along so well. And every time you use a superhero, they'll gain experience, and eventually this will lead to them leveling up. And this will allow you to unlock brand new skills, which you'll have to learn to use as well, meaning that no two times that you play this minigame are the same, keeping things interesting all throughout your playthrough. The best part to Dispatch, though, is of course the story. The voice acting is incredible. The story had me absolutely glued to it from start to finish, and even though this isn't a particularly long game, it's an utterly fantastic experience, and I can't recommend it enough. Then in 6th place, we have Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think we all know by now that this is an incredible game that does what it does incredibly well. I think this is just Nintendo at its best. And this is essentially Mario Odyssey, but with Donkey Kong instead of Mario. And in this, Donkey Kong teams up with Pauline to try and not only recover the stolen bananas, but also to make their way to the planet core, where the legend says that they'll be granted their greatest wish. Now, not only is this game gorgeous, but the mechanics are a lot of fun as well, allowing you to break through literally everything you see in a level, but also allowing you to acquire some really fun abilities as well. And even though this isn't necessarily a particularly difficult game, although my dad did have some issues with some of the boss fights, it is an incredibly fun game and also a more difficult game to 100% and complete, especially with some of the challenge levels. And I think it's just one of those games where everyone's going to have a great time playing it. Then in 5th place, we have Final Fantasy Remake Intergrade. Now I am a little embarrassed to say, I've never played a Final Fantasy VII game before, so this was my very first time. Now at first, the best thing about this game was me realizing that these were the guys that I've been seeing in Super Smash Bros. All this time, and finally recognizing where they've come from. But it really only took literally 2 hours of gameplay for me to be hooked, because the story was so interesting. This will see you mainly play as Cloud, who is an ex-soldier turned mercenary for hire. And the people who have hired him are a group of rebels called Avalanche, who are determined to try and protect the planet. You see, there's this thing called Mako that is the lifeblood of the entire planet, but it's also the main energy source. And thanks to an evil energy company who now control the world, Mako is very quickly running out. So Cloud is hired to try and help the group to blow up a reactor. But it turns out blowing up that first reactor was actually the beginning of Cloud's journey, not the end, as he becomes wrapped up in a story that will shape the entire world. Now at first, I did definitely struggle with the combat system, but it was actually far more like Xenoblade than I was expecting it to be, because even though you can attack normally, you can also sort of pause time in order to do special attacks. And once you get the hang of it, this is a really fun battle system. But as I say with RPGs, the thing I love the most with them is the story. Now before you type down below, I have somehow avoided spoilers for this game since 1997. So I have no idea where this series is heading, but I am excited to tackle the sequel, which comes out soon. So far though, I love all the characters that we've met, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And if you're someone like me who has never played any of these games before, Final Fantasy VII is actually a fantastic place to start. Then in 4th place, we have Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. Now this game is probably the perfect example of why I bought my Nintendo Switch 2, because I feel like I am getting the exact same experience playing Fantasy Life on my Switch 2 as I did when I first picked this up on my PC, as they look practically identical. And playing this on the Switch 2 is perfect because this is one of those games that is just so easy to pick up whether you have 5 minutes or 5 hours. Now, Fantasy Life is a little bit of a different RPG to all the games I mentioned before, as this one has a little bit less emphasis on its story. Because whilst the story is still there, it's definitely a lot more lighthearted, and there's a bigger emphasis on more of the cozy life sim elements. The game begins with you stumbling across a barren island, where all that is left on it is just ruins. But after exploring a little bit further, you get transported 10,000 years into the past, where this island is not only full of people, but also full of life. And after wandering around a little bit, you decide to make it your mission to try and figure out what on earth happened to turn this island into what it is 10,000 years into the future. But the best thing about Fantasy Life is the story is just one aspect of the many things you can do in the game. Because when you're not doing the main storyline, you can either spend your time leveling up your lives, because in Fantasy Life, you don't just level up your battling ability, you level up all of your life sim abilities as well. So this is anything from carpentry, farming, wood cutting, to even alchemy, so you can make yourself healing potions. And all of these will be needed in the main storyline as well. You'll also have a town to rebuild yourself, where you can place buildings around, decorate, and even terraform. There's also an open world area for you to explore, and this is where you're going to get a lot of the rare materials that you're going to need for crafting in the later game. So this is definitely somewhere you're going to want to explore often. And if this isn't enough, there's also dungeons that you can take on, again, for rare materials, so you can craft some of the endgame weapons and armor as well. So this is why I say this is a perfect game for whatever mood you're in, and it's a game I dumped like 100 hours into with no problem whatsoever because I was just having so much fun playing it. Next up, we have Blueprints. This is such a difficult game to explain because nearly everything is spoilers. But this is probably one of the best puzzle games of all time. And even if you're someone who thinks you don't like a puzzle game, you're probably gonna wind up loving this one. The game begins with you entering a manor called Mount Holly, a manor which you are set to inherit if you can find a secret room called Room 46. But very quickly you learn that this house is unlike anything you've seen before, as every time you walk up to a door, you're given 3 different rooms to choose from. And your main goal simply appears to be making a path the entire way through the manor without any dead ends. But of course, it's not that simple, as you begin to realize that every single room that you can pick from actually has either positive or negative effects. And this can be anything from having a puzzle that you need to solve, items that you can collect, or a dreaded red room. But you're also limited by how many rooms you can walk into. And when this number at the top reaches 0, you'll start a brand new day. And you'll find that all of the rooms have been reset, and the only thing you really get to keep is your knowledge. And honestly, the crazy part about Blueprints is we're only scratching the surface of what this game has to offer. This is a game filled with puzzles where nearly everything that you see is going to be something that you actually want to jot down in a notebook, because yes, it's one of those types of games, and as much as I want to show you my notes, I can't, because as I said, everything is a spoiler. But the thing that makes Blueprints truly special is not only how clever and different all the different puzzles are that you're going to encounter, but it's the fact that these puzzles coincide with you unraveling the story as well. A story which is fantastic, a story which made me cry, and that's why this is one of my favorite games of all time. I am so glad this came to the Switch too, because it is utterly fantastic, and this is your sign to give this game a go. Next, in second place, we have Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar. Now, despite the fact that we seem to be getting a relentless amount of farming sim releases, this one has stood out for all of the right reasons. Because even though this has your typical farming sim loop of tending to your crops and taking care of the animals, the thing that really sets this apart is the Grand Bazaar, which is essentially just a weekly market held every Saturday. And this is a market where you can not only go and buy a lot of useful things for your own farm, but it's also where you can sell everything that you make for money as well. But in Story of Seasons, this market is far more important than just a place to make money, as the bigger the market is, the more people that want to visit your town and even live there. And of course, being the new farmer in town, the mayor has decided that it's basically your job to try and level up the Grand Bazaar to be the very best. So basically, the whole town's success is riding on your shoulders. But the wonderful thing about this Grand Bazaar happening every single week is it kind of changes up your farming sim routine. So instead of you, for example, picking up the milk that you get from the cows and immediately putting it out for sale, you'll find yourself trying to change that either into cheese or changing that cheese even into a meal, depending on what items are trending at the market stall that week. And this means that you approach this farming sim completely different to others you may have played. But that isn't the only thing that sets this farming sim apart. As in Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar, nearly every single interaction you have with characters will be fully voice acted. And not only does that mean the main storyline itself has voice acting, but so does every single cutscene that you have with each of the characters. And for me, this always does so much to make the interactions with the characters feel more meaningful and everything just feel a little bit more alive. And this, combined with probably some of the best events I've ever seen in a farming sim, just make this so much fun to play. And all of this combined just made this a farming sim that has just topped so many others that I've played. Then, surprising absolutely no one, in first place, my most beloved Switch 2 game so far is Pokopia. I feel like at this point, I might not even need to tell you how much I love the game, and instead, let me show you my Pokopia Island, because I think this is the best way to demonstrate just how obsessed I've been with this game, how much I can't put it down, and why I think this is utterly fantastic. Because tell me how this game managed to have a story that made me cry, decoration mechanics that Animal Crossing could never even imagine, and a reason to keep playing this long beyond the story finishing. So basically what I'm trying to say is Pokopia has it all. In Pokopia, you play as a Ditto who is transformed into a human after all the humans have seemingly disappeared from the land. So you make it your mission to try and restore the land in order to encourage the humans to come back. But as you get to work watering grass, planting trees, it's not actually humans that you begin to attract, and instead it's lost Pokemon. And even though, much like you, the Pokemon don't have any memories of what happened to them, they do have abilities, teaching you different moves and allowing you to do more to restore the different areas that you get to go to. And as you explore, you'll find different snippets of photographs and newspapers that allow you to piece together what happened to this region. And I can honestly say you're going to get a lot of hours out of this game before you get bored, as there is so much to do. As this game is absolutely massive. As not only do you have 5 different areas to explore, each with their own Pokemon whose habitats you need to discover, that alone will keep you busy for a while. And then alongside the main story, which will take you a solid 60 hours, there's also individual Pokemon requests to tend to in order to make them happy. And of course, you also have the decorating to do as well. I can't stress enough how much I love this game. I never thought anything would replace Animal Crossing New Horizons as my comfort game, but this, I think, has somehow taken that spot. It just makes me feel so good when I play it. I enjoy decorating, which is not something I really say about any game. And it's a game I am still playing even though I've finished its story. And if I didn't already have a Switch 2 before the release of Pokopia would have definitely been the reason, and it would have been so worthwhile. Let me know in the comments down below what is your favorite Switch 2 game so far, and if you're looking for some big upcoming releases, click this video here.